welcome everybody. I'm Blair Monk from Oricon and ITS New Zealand. We're here for Techweek, and Waka Kotahi is going to give us an update on their Transport Innovation Fund. Just a little bit of background on ITS New Zealand. We've been around since 2004, and ITS New Zealand advocates for education and connections of the technical industries with government and academia. And we also link with other technology and ITS global networks. So we've run a number of conferences. Simon will talk to you about T-Tech after the event. And we're into diversity and cross-sector engagement and research and advocacy. Here's a number of gold, silver and bronze members. Simon will talk to you a little bit about that later on, but the list is getting longer and longer every year.
Which is good.
Which is good. Okay, housekeeping, please, if you've got any questions, put them in the chat on the Teams page. Please put your name and your organisation if possible. Report any technical issues to Libby. Her text number is available on the chat. And the webinar is being recorded, so we can put that on the ITS New Zealand webpage for everyone to view over the next week or so. And now I'll hand over to Lee McKenzie from Waka Kotahi.
Thank you, Blair. Kia ora koutou katoa, ko Lee McKenzie tōku ingoa. Hello and welcome. It's really nice to see some familiar faces in the room today, as well as some new faces, which is fantastic. And it is my absolute pleasure to be able to introduce the session about angitu, give you a little bit of an introduction about it, but more importantly, to be able to introduce the three wonderful speakers that we've got here today, who are going to talk about their innovations and the support that they're receiving from angitu. Okay. Oh.
What happened here?
Oh, it's me and technology. Okay, so in May last year, Waka Kotahi launched angitu, which is an innovation fund. It is designed to support the private sector to develop and accelerate innovative transport solutions, and innovative transport solutions that are going to help New Zealand to solve some of our sort of wicked difficult transport challenges. It is a challenge-based fund, which means that we publish tightly defined challenges and then we ask the sector to respond to those. And $15 million has been allocated to the fund over a 2-year period, so that funding actually comes to an end in the middle of next year. It's $15 million from the National Land Transport Fund. And the one thing I wanted to point out was that we actually had a very clear mandate from the government to proactively explore and try and remove barriers to innovation. And there's some text up there on the slide which actually spells it out. That's out of the government policy statement on land transport investment. So one of the first things that we did when we were starting out this project and looking at what some of the barriers were, we went out and actually talked to the sector, and we asked the sector to help us understand what the barriers were and what we could do to remove some of those. I am going to talk through each one simply because I know we've got people online. I'll bring them up on the screen. So this is some of the feedback that we got. Focus on the outcome, not the process. Move from a taker of technology to being an enabler. Create a regulatory framework that removes hoops rather than one that makes innovators jump through them. Create an application process that works for us and the applicants. By us, I mean Waka Kotahi. And I'm sure many of you have experienced application forms where it's kind of like having to tell your whole life story, and they go, so it was about please make it simple. We know you need certain information, but make it simple for us as well. Support new startups to prove their credibility, create space for real world testing, offer enablement that is more than just money, so the non-financial support, and be transparent from the start. So with that in mind, we designed the fund, with that feedback in mind, we designed the fund with a number of objectives in mind as well. And I just want to focus on two today that I think are particularly relevant to today's session, and especially when we start to hear from some of the fund recipients. So the first thing is that we want to change how we engage with the private sector to deliver innovative solutions for transport and also broaden our private sector outreach. And we also, as I've already touched upon, we want to offer support that is more than just funding, because we know that for some innovators it's not just about funding, but it's also having access to things like data, to transport expertise, and particularly help with navigating through Waka Kotahi and through transport regulation. And the other thing that was really strong in terms of feedback was create some environments where we can undertake real world testing. So, angitu and the name. Again, after doing the research and the design thinking around the fund, we named it angitu, and the reason we did that, and again I'll read this out, is because angitu is about paddling to opportunity. Hoi is the paddle, and it's our symbol for mahi or doing the work. And it represents opportunity, work and success. And for us, angitu is about encouraging communities to pick up a paddle, bring their ideas and work alongside us to help us shape the future of the land transport system. So after launching the fund last year in May, we then published a round of challenges in June. And these are the 3 challenges. Again, I'll just talk through them really quickly for the people online. How do we reduce the environmental impacts of transport, infrastructure, construction, operation and maintenance activities through the use of recycled materials and sustainable practices? How might we integrate low emission first and last mile transport solutions into our public transport system? And how might we provide underserved communities, including rural communities, with greater access to safe and low emission and reliable modes of transport? We received 118 applications in response to that first round of challenges, and we funded 23 to a sum of about $4 million. And I just wanted to point out, and back to one of the objectives, which was around broadening our private sector outreach, we did actually receive applications from a range of different community groups, iwi, startup technology companies, right through to large research organisations. And the sums of money that we funded have ranged from about $30,000 to $500,000. And for anyone that's not aware, all of this information is on our website, and there's the link there. I think that is me. Which is great. And now I really do have the pleasure of handing over to our first speaker, which is AIDAN from Shutl. So over to you, AIDAN.
Thanks, Lee. It's actually quite a bit of a new experience sitting behind a desk doing a presentation, but and Lee has actually been, I got the call back, she's heard my presentation on Monday, so I didn't do too bad, obviously. So bit of introduction, my name's AIDAN Smith, I'm the co-founder here at Shutl. We're an e-mobility innovation company that's on a mission to really change the way New Zealand moves and revolutionise that. A bit of background about my technology development background. Over the last 8 years, I've travelled the world. I've developed new transport systems for Google in Silicon Valley. I've been over to South Korea to develop zip lines that go around corners. I know it doesn't really sound like it should, but it works. And then early on, we actually developed New Zealand's first 4-wheel drive electric race car and took that over to Australia and raced it over there. But that journey has brought me to Shutl, and I firmly believe, and from my experience, with the right technology platforms, we can assist and accelerate New Zealand's or Kiwis' transition to more sustainable modes of travel. But change is needed, and unless you've been living under a rock, New Zealand has a really car-dependent culture. The way that we use cars is problematic and inefficient. We waste a huge amount of energy, time, and essentially create a huge amount of pollution and wastage. I'm an engineer, waste is bad, in the process. There's 2% of New Zealand adults regularly ride to work, and the majority of the other adults know that there's a better way to get to and from work that's more sustainable, doesn't take as long, and is actually healthier for the community. And so with the support of Waka Kotahi, we set out to understand and help accelerate the transition to this, but it started by catalysing change. And so how did we get to where we are? It's really important to note that changing human behaviour is hard, and that's at the best of times. Getting people out of their comfy cars that they're paid for, that they can listen to their music and they're safe from the environments, is no easy feat, and transferring that to bikes. However, there are some barriers in place for this. People don't want to be identified. Like, there's some people that don't want to identify as a cyclist because there's the public perceived frustration with them on the road. It is dangerous. There are huge barriers to giving it a go, whether that's financial or whether it's actually just knowledge around how to get to and from work and just using a bike. And there's no middle ground for most New Zealanders. It often is led to be an all or nothing commitment if you're going to buy an e-bike or buy a bike to actually give it a go. And so a lot of the time it gets left as an idea and not actually reality. But there is a little silver bullet or a silver lining to this, is across the world there's other countries that have been experiencing this problem with higher density to us. Take UK and London around there. In West London and Dublin City, their councils have actually put together month-long or multiple month-long e-bike trials to allow their staff to essentially get activated for no capital outlay to try out a bike to and from work. So there's a benefit to the employer, but also a benefit to the employee. And over in Leeds, they've actually taken it one step further, where they've actually allowed any person in the public to sign up to a 2-week free e-bike trial to further reduce those barriers to just giving it a go. So remember, taking that idea and turning it into reality. But what we wanted to do was taking these overseas examples and understand how could we do this in New Zealand, because we need change. It only happens when actually people put some mahi in to actually make it happen. And so what we identified really early on was there was an unknown impact around whether the New Zealand community would actually adopt a trial like this, because as we said, human behaviour is a funny thing, and so we needed to qualify that. But then what we really identified was there was no technology platform, both the bikes as well as the software platform, that would be able to enable a trial like this in an efficient way for a fleet operator. And so with the help of or the funding from Waka Kotahi, we set out and we started to research and understand the key requirements around a trial like this and what would be those key requirements. And so a key requirement was it had to be an e-bike, and it had to be equitable to all ages and abilities. But we also needed to be reliable. So for the fleet operator, we needed to have a really minimal service requirement for it to keep those operating costs low. But we also had to have it reliable, because you only get really one shot to activate the cyclist, and we really need to have maximum rider satisfaction during that trial period. We needed to have a really hassle-free process, so something that you could just sit back, relax, go on your phone, sign up, and it's all taken care of. The bike gets delivered to your door, which was pretty cool. And the last point, and this is where the technology starts to really help, is this data-driven insights, to actually understand the valuable insight and impact from this trial actually being had. And so with that in mind, and framing lots of that information up, we set out and we split this into 2 key development streams. A community trial where we gauged the demand, usage and impact of actually being able to activate a cyclist and the cost around that per cyclist. And then the technology, where we had to develop a connected e-bike and a technology platform to be able to efficiently operate these sorts of trials in our centres across New Zealand. And so that was back in September. We got the great word and the support from Waka Kotahi, and we set out and we started our trial in December. We completed our trial in February this year. And so just to give some highlights to that trial and some background, we had 75 riders get their own e-bike over an 8-week period across the summer. These riders, 80% of them had never actually ridden an e-bike before, so they were primed to be activated, basically. A lot of these people hadn't ridden a bike since they were my age, so sub 30. So it was really cool to see, and all of a sudden they felt like a kid again was a very common comment. They travelled over 16,000 kilometres, which is a huge distance. It's 10 times the size of New Zealand, or length of New Zealand. And one of the key metrics that we had was straight after the trial, we had a 70% mode shift or intent for them to actually commute by e-bike in the future, which is really cool to see. And then last week we actually had a follow-up survey, and this actually increased to even a further qualified amount of 78% of people that were on our trial had either bought, are buying, or are now riding to and from work, which is incredible. And so over that period, we had a bit of word of mouth as well, and we had 400 people sign up for future trials, and we didn't even advertise that, just from that word of mouth. And a key thing to note here was there was 75 bikes that actually went into households, and of each of those households, over 80% of them got ridden by more than one person in that household. So the impact is greater than 75, which just goes to show the real impact is, you kind of think of a network effect, and this is what's happening here. A key part of our survey was actually to understand barriers as well, because that's that human behaviour aspect. And obviously this is very geographically dependent. Down in Christchurch, we have a huge amount of bike infrastructure and bike lanes. And so safety was actually seen as one of the lower barriers. It was only 15% of people said that was the main barrier. Whereas cost was actually the one that was kind of stopping people giving it a go at 55%. So some really good insight there. And then onto the technology platform. So this is our prototype, and doesn't it look great? It's a connected e-bike that is optimized for utility and reliability. And so the hardware is not just everything. We also had to create a software platform that would allow the fleet operator to actually be able to see the key info around each of the bikes. So that's location, its health or battery, as well as the usage stats, which are really key to actually understand how utilised each of these trialists are using the bike to actually correlate that to the activation stat there. And so it's important to kind of touch on the impact to this. Not only have we showed that with the correct infrastructure and support, there is actually a real appetite by Kiwis to transition to more sustainable modes of travel. And it's important to also show, and it just kind of strengthens the case, that e-bikes or bikes in general are actually a really viable and reliable means of transport for the majority of the population that are able, which is cool to see. The impact actually was greater than the trialists, as we were saying. 75 people had bikes, but it actually flow on to further people within that household, which was cool. And so the impact shouldn't really just stop there within that single trial. There has been an increased demand and interest with working with Waka Kotahi to roll this out nationwide. And so we're in talks to understand what that could look like and a roadmap to actually see if that's possible, which is really cool. And over this whole journey and being on the coalface and hearing people's problems around this, around just getting active or activated as a biker, we kind of uncovered a few other challenges within this industry. One of these being logistics, or light electric vehicles logistics. And so the problem here that we faced was we saw a number of Uber Eats and DoorDash drivers came to us asking, can we have an on-demand e-bike to deliver our food with? Because the capital outlay just doesn't make sense when you're delivering for like a $4 fee. And so came Logistics, which is an on-demand e-mobility hub that's specifically designed for logistics workers or gig economy workers. And so to embody this, imagine your next Uber Eats or DoorDash delivery or DHL order being delivered by a cargo e-bike, which is really cool. And another one was actually the burden or the hassle of actually going through the purchasing journey. When consumers go out and purchase a bike or an e-bike, they're bombarded by marketing, and it's just a minefield. People are biased in ways that shouldn't be. And so what we've created, or what we're going through, is creating a tool that allows a non-biased assessment of an individual's needs and requirements to actually be able to use AI to inform what's the safest and best ride for their, tailored for their needs, basically. And so that's what my Waka is. And the goal with that is to improve rider safety and satisfaction through AI ride matching technology. So just imagine at your fingertips, you can ask any question about what you want in a bike, and it can respond with exactly a non-biased approach. So long are the days that the bike salesperson is just understanding what's your budget to sell to you, which is cool to see. And so to wrap up, Waka Kotahi's impact has gone beyond mere funding. The connections into local councils have actually allowed us to engage in a really fast-paced way to test and develop a community trial, which has actually been, it hasn't been seen within New Zealand's councils for a long time. The credibility has allowed us to take meetings and actually develop a prototype with some of Taiwan's largest bike manufacturers, all due to the New Zealand Transport Agency's kind of credibility there. And following on from that, there's further opportunities that have actually been created from being on the coalface and actually hearing people's problems, which wouldn't have been possible without this funding. And so to wrap up, we're from Shutl, and we're really passionate about revolutionising the way New Zealand moves, and we're really keen to keep you along the journey with us. So yeah, thank you.
And one thing I should have just said is we hope we have time for some questions at the end, but we're just going to go through the presentation. Next fantastic speaker to hear from is EVERTON from IKL, and I'm not even going to try to explain how you do that. So welcome.
I'm in good heart when we have young people like this sort of come up with these amazing ideas. It makes me feel a bit humble about what I'm going to talk about. So FIONA around, when I came up, well, as I was putting this presentation together, we never actually had a name for it, so it actually worked out quite well. So FIONA around is this concept about creating transport opportunities in rural areas using our great New Zealand rail network. So this is just a bit about our community. So from the Manawatu, we just live outside of Fielding in a small Māori community that's existed in this area for about 170 odd years. It's a combination of probably four hapu, and comes from a grouping of three groupings, Maniapoto, Raukawa, and Tuwharetoa. The valley, it's called the Valley, so there's about 1,000 hectares of Māori land in there, a few Māori, obviously Māori whānau that have lived there for that period of time. And like most rural communities, you rely on your car to get around in there. So we had a bit of a conversation in our community about as more people want to come home, some of those are not in the best financial situations. So access to public transport or consideration about how we could provide public transport was one of those conversations, particularly with our kaumātua who are getting older and though they want to return, not having access to health services and stuff like that in the towns, and, was a conversation that we needed to have. We have a little company in our valley that was established 2017. It's called Te Kotahi Limited, and it's established as a community entity to drive innovation and opportunities and economic development for our valley. So that sort of led this particular process and idea. So that's how valley got. And it's like every other sort of rural community. You often have a train track maybe going through a community, but we had a lot of our kaumātua talk about the time that when they had access to rail, they were travelling big distances. It was just part of the way they got around, and we're talking early 50s and 60s. It was, it was a way that they travelled, so it was familiar to them. At the end of this road is a small area called Kakariki that used to have a place where you could catch the trains. They had a little rail yard there, but in the 1980s it was disbanded, so it sort of disappeared off the landscape. So as we started to think about what we could do to support these better access to public transport, we started this conversation with Kiwi Rail 2 years ago, and we proposed the idea of developing a small shuttle service between Fielding and Martin, an autonomous one. So naively, it turns out that I thought the idea was great. We took it to Kiwi Rail, and then for 2 years we got into a bit of a conversation about what it would take to get rail on here. And it was great. You start to understand a culture, and this is a culture of an organisation that is very, very protective of what they have and very safety conscious. So they're very wary when someone turns up and says we're going to put something on the railway track. So this was an ongoing conversation, and I was adamant that we needed to get a physical vehicle on the tracks, so we could test this out, within a year, but that did not happen. I remember there's a steam train enthusiastic place in Fielding, right? They route with things. So I went in and I talked to them. I said, we're going to do this, going to put this on. They just looked at me and said, have you got a deal with him? I said, of course, once you see the idea, it's going to be great. Right? So I went in there. So we got into this. So to be fair, they continued the conversation, but we got to the point where it was not going to happen. They every time we put up something, they said we need to test it, and they said we can't test it till we put it on there. And so we got into this loop, and so the conversation ended up, okay, what can we do differently? AKA the idea of using a digital twin to do the testing in a virtual space, and then be able to go back to Kiwi Rail, say, and work with them and show them, and any issues they brought up, could we test it in that sort of space? So we began this journey. Again, even that process of getting access to their track so we could end up doing this digital filming, doing the LiDAR filming so we could create this digital model, became a 6-month journey. So it's given us 2 years. And we finally got agreement. But it was, and this is where I've got to say thank you to Waka Kotahi. We had this hump. We needed to get on the tracks, and we needed the investment to get on the tracks, but obviously it's such a new idea that it was very difficult. And when this opportunity came along and we were funded for it, it got us over that hump, and it got us directly talking to Kiwi Rail about now we're in a position to actually film and to do the work to digitise it and put it in the 3D model. So April the 5th, we finally got to the tracks, and like most things, it starts with our community. So these are the people that are involved in filming that day. Interesting enough, it may have taken us 6 months to finally get onto the tracks, but it only took the crew from the local branch of Kiwi Rail, who had only been told a couple of weeks before that you're going to put these guys going to come down and start filming your tracks, and they were amazing, right? They know their stuff, and they know everything about their network, about their railway track, and we were on there. I don't know if you can see the little back of that truck down bottom there. It's got a whole lot of pellets on the back because, again, they're quite innovative because we need to position our gear, so they came along and they thought up their own ideas. But we got really good feedback from them that this was the type of stuff they were looking for, the things we were talking about, the innovation we were talking about. I'll just keep walking through until I get it. So this is just the group that got together, Kiwi Rail staff, our community staff, and we also partnered with Auckland University. So the team is there from Auckland University and our community. And we also had a guy, Gordon Lyle, who was that's it, that's the next slide. Yeah. So I'll shoot into the tech now because the background of why we got there is I can talk a bit more to the end. So basically what we needed to do was collect, digitise the track. So we got a relationship with these 2 companies, entities. One was flying the drone and one was doing the road, digitising the track. So it's basically using a LiDAR system. I don't know if everybody knows about LiDAR, but LiDAR is basically, it uses lasers to create a 3D map of something. So it gives you all the ridges and stuff. We had to do both of them because eventually we're going to combine those data from both. So the whole sort of process, these guys are expert at it, but I'm not. So basically we took both those feeds, we turned them into a single model, and then we were able to drill down to what is actually actually in that point cloud, what the data we've collected. So basically it's collect, digitize, and then we're able to manipulate that data into what we call the 3D, the twinning project. So this is a basic look at the data being digitized. So you can see in the corner, the bottom right corner, that's the track view, and then you can see using the drone, the overview, and then we're able to insert different assets into that. So those trains aren't real, they are inserted as an element, cars and stuff. So we can start to insert and manipulate. So again, if you look at the difference between the last slide and the slide, again, it's really easy and very simple. Just keep inserting different assets and different scenarios into that train. But again, the real data, the actual physical space around that, is the real data we've collected. So as we add things in, we can start to create these interactions. Again, this would be an automated in a different one, but it shows, again, the interaction with traffic, with the road and traffic and stuff like that. The next stage is to integrate in crossing sensors. So part of the project was we could do the static, once we've collected and created a static visualization of the track in 3D, we then want to integrate live data. So camera data, IoT sensors, all that type of stuff at the edge or around the edges where we get interaction with traffic and other type of stuff. So we can show that the model we create isn't a static model, that you're updating with certain elements and be able to create these interactions and test these interactions. And obviously, as you develop and create the models and you start to look at developing traffic patterns and stuff on the tracks, as you integrate more data in, obviously the application of technologies like AI become important. We had to take this journey and go through this process before obviously we can get something physical on the tracks. So it's been really important, as though it's not a direct path to being able to get our vehicle on the track. We find that we are up against a culture, and a culture needs total reinforcement of why you want to get on the tracks. So this exercise has been more about, and it's helping us obviously inform us how we're developing ourselves, but it's all about going back to QRail. So we had a conversation with QRail, we started to show them some of the early impacts, and now we've moved away from just the questions of compliance, but now we're starting to talk about, well, how do we apply this? What are we talking about in this situation? So we're starting to move them along the journey, which has been really important. Next slide just says what's next, so you don't think you have to have that next slide. Yeah, what is next? So this has been important. But the other thing that's coming out of being able to create this first model and be able to show these interactions is other people are starting to look at it, where the guys from Auckland University are now starting to look at it because the train goes over a railway, over a bridge. And now they're looking at maybe the opportunity of modelling the resilience of the bridges. So we're starting to get these offshoots, or even before we've got the model out the door, we're starting to get people talking about the offshoots of having this core central data that we've created around this 3D model. The other great thing about once you start getting into this digital twinning concept is that you can actually start to develop what I call synthetic data. So you don't even have to have real traffic. It creates real traffic to create the patterns that AI will eventually use to be able to manage traffic. So, data is the key when you're talking about AI and digital and in the digital twin space. It's getting to the point where you can create whole virtual worlds and run quite different scenarios to create the type of programs and safety protocols and stuff that we need to do. I'm not sure we're around the timing, but so our next step is to go back. Obviously, we're going to be doing the first demonstration, the physical demonstration of this, a totally VR type environment, and all the whiz bangs to get that, and then hopefully we can start moving the conversation about how we go from. We only collected 6.1 kilometres to prove the concept. The track distance between Martin and FIONA is 26. Our next goal is to go to that full line track and start again rebuilding and that. The other element is it took us a day to do that original work, to do the filming, and it's taken obviously a few weeks to start putting it together. I think there's two components to starting to develop out of the work. One is it's helping us prove, and next year we hope to put a robotic vehicle or system on the track next year based on what we learn out of this, just to test it in a physical sense and use that data to create the engineering we need for an actual vehicle. And then within 2 years, well, we say 2027, we hope to have an actual service running, and that's our goal. Again, we're getting questioned. There's a whole lot of conversations that Kira Rao is going to take us through that journey, but I think we now have something that we can have a commonality over discussion and test and show how they can apply it to their own broader concept. So that's sort of where our shuttle is. But the other thing we're pushing really hard on is we can do this we can do it in a day. We expect to do the capture of the next 126 kilometres in a day. We expect to do 100 kilometres within a day, and that's about efficiency and developing systems that allow us to do that type of stuff. Because eventually we do need to map our track. You know, it's one of the unique aspects about rail. You can put autonomous rail on a rail track because the elements that you have to deal with are not as scary as you have to deal on road. So it's one of the most vital things. But you need a track, and you need data about that track, and you need a national track data to allow us to do that. So we're talking about that and working that through with Kira. And the only other thing I'd like to add on that is you also need that data capture infrastructure. If you want to go more live, and I think that's going to be the sweet spot, is taking live data from many points along the track for safety, you know, for maintenance, all that type of stuff. Then our 5G infrastructure has to start to come in, 5G, 6G infrastructure has to come in. And again, we're thinking about that in the models we've created. I hope it didn't take too far in the journey, but
Thank you, Graham. I think we should feel very humbled by what you're doing for your community. It's awesome, so thank you. And our last but not least, and I don't know how you're going to do this, but we have two more fantastic speakers from Somar Digital. So I'm going to hand over to FIONA and SHAUN, and off you go. Thanks.
Tough act to follow, boys. Goodness me. No mai haere mai, everyone, big warm welcome. My name is FIONA REID. I'm the very proud CEO of Somar Digital. Go girls, I'd say that. And I'm with my very talented colleague today, SHAUN Hunter, and we're delighted to be here today to showcase the wonderful work that we've undertaken to design and develop the Waka Kotahi funded, thanks Lee, cost of journey calculator. But before we go to do that, I'm going to shamelessly spend the first couple of minutes sharing with you a little bit about Somar Digital, who we are, what we do, and what we value, as well as a couple of other examples that we're super proud of, just to set the scene a bit more before SHAUN dives deep into the cost of journey calculator for us. So we were founded over 14 years ago by a 6'4" chatty giant, as some people in this room know he's called. Aaron Scott is his name, and he came from really humble beginnings, and from a very early age, I think wanted to make a better life for himself and his family. And as he got older and taller, he wanted to make a difference for the communities that he both lived and worked in. And it's those values that very much we hold dear now, part of Somar Digital's DNA and who we are today. And we're incredibly focused and passionate about creating great customer experiences where helping communities is at the heart of everything we do. We're a traditional digital agency based here in Wellington, offering those 9 key services from design through to development, through to cloud hosting, SEO, SEM, as well as providing a dedicated team for ongoing support and maintenance, which is quite unique in the Wellington agency market. Over the years, we've built up a deep expertise in the $20 billion plus community space, and we're very humbled and proud to look after some of the most iconic and beloved organisations in New Zealand, such as Plunket New Zealand, Cancer Society, Red Cross and Save the Children, to name but a few. And over the years, as our capabilities have grown and we have grown as a team, we've become very good at designing and developing simple solutions for very complex challenges. One of which is this example here, Mountain Safety Council's all-in-one app, Plan My Walk, which primary purpose is to keep Kiwis safe in the great outdoors and, more importantly, to save lives. And by enabling trampers at all levels to preemptively plan their walk, helping to revolutionise outdoor safety one step at a time. So what's our secret sauce? Our secret sauce that enables us to consistently deliver great customer experiences is our commitment to these shared company values that you can see on the screen now, which is strongly underpinned by our steadfast alignment of values between our people, our partners, and our clients. We believe good people, combined with a high care factor and a real purpose, can deliver awesome customer experience outcomes, where helping people is at the heart of everything that we do. Another excellent example of this actually is hitting the streets both figuratively and literally this week, with the initial launch of a game-changing onboard announcement solution, which will provide visually and audio impaired Metlink travellers the independence and freedom the rest of us take for granted on a daily basis by communicating in real time what their next stop is. And speaking of Metlink, it's now time to hand you over to SHAUN, who's going to take you into the deep dive of our cost of journey calculator. SHAUN.
Thanks, Fiona. So I'm going to walk through the cost of journey calculator, what it is, and how we're getting it to the general public to help them make better transport decisions. So when we submitted our application to the Waka Kotahi Innovation Fund, we asked ourselves a few core questions. What could we do to make a positive change and encourage the uptake of public transport? How could we technically deliver this, as well as partnering with our partner through Metlink, Greater Wellington Regional Council? And ultimately, how could we reduce congestion on the roads and lower emissions? We wanted to make sure that whatever solution we put forward for the Innovation Fund, that we could deliver it, and that it would have real positive impact on both the users that interact with it, as well as our communities that we serve. So what did we build? We built an API-driven total cost of travel engine. We started off by undertaking some pretty extensive research into all the factors that are considered when calculating the cost of running a vehicle. This included costs like wear and tear, insurances, tyres, petrol costs, registration, and warranty fitness fees. Our team gathered this information from a variety of sources, with preferences towards official government guidance where we could, to build up an accurate picture of that true cost of travel. These sources included the AA, ECA, and Ministry for the Environment. We also looked at a variety of other calculators and comparison tools, both for vehicle costs and carbon emissions, and we knew that we had a unique solution to offer in this space. From there, we worked with our in-house development team to build an engine that allowed us not only to compare these costs, but also carbon emissions, and then put them up against the costs and carbon emissions of public transport. The calculation engine can produce cost profiles for individual vehicle types, or generalised into groups like petrol, diesel, or electric vehicles. We built a system that allows it to be queried for individual trip comparisons, like we're doing for Metlink, or in other interesting ways, like whole-of-life comparisons between vehicle types, perhaps for someone that is looking to see the cost comparison of switching to an EV. So we were fortunate enough to have a really great partner with this project with Greater Wellington Regional Council and their public transport arm, Metlink. They were very strong supporters of the tool right from the start. They were really happy for us to scope out and research and then build the tool, which would ultimately end up being delivered through their website and app. In an upcoming release, and hopefully very, very soon, the Metlink website and app will feature the total cost of travel calculator as part of the journey planner. It's going to be shown right up front to users when a user does a journey plan, so when they want to find out how to get from A to B. Over 250,000 monthly users will have access to this tool, and it'll be delivered on the 8,000 journey plans that are undertaken per day. The section which has been added is aptly titled Compare to Cost of Private Transport. It sits right underneath where we show the snapper and cash costs for public transport alongside the public transport carbon emissions. The user of the website or the app can expand the section open to see a comparison between public transport and private vehicles, both for the cost and carbon emissions of each. And we base this on common petrol, diesel and electric vehicles. While the tool is capable of delivering specific vehicle comparisons, for the Metlink use case, we've opted to keep it quite generalized. We didn't want to bombard the user with having to ask them exactly what their vehicle was we wanted to compare it to, hence showing petrol, diesel and electric as the primary options. By providing users with this comparison information really upfront at the time that they're thinking about how to get from A to B, we're really confident this will encourage them to not only think about, but really make that mode shift decision that will have a very real and positive impact on our roads, commute times, and our carbon footprint. Metlink has been the first public transport agency that we've been able to roll this out onto, but we've built it in a way that is a future-proofed API-driven system, so it could be used for other public transport websites, and we really hope that it actually will be, or even for other use cases as well. For example, in the energy sector, to help inform customers about what cost savings they could make by switching to electric vehicles and using at-home charging solutions, or perhaps for those that are interested in calculating their commute costs when looking at moving house. Those are just a couple of examples, but the engine has been really built in a flexible way that uses a lot of underlying data to allow really interesting comparisons to be built. We're really excited about the opportunities that this cost of travel calculator and underlying cost comparison engine could unlock. Pass back over to you, Fiona.
Thanks, Sean. So without doubt, our funding partnership has delivered multiple benefits for our people, our partners and our clients. As Lee communicated in her part of the presentation, there were some key objectives. I've probably truncated them down and simplified them down to 3 very key points, but ultimately these are things that we were focused on in terms of, as a recipient, trying to deliver to. So as you see, catalyse the actions, enable innovators, and lastly to accelerate innovation. So the big question is, how did Somar Digital go against those 3 objectives? And I'm going to say very unhumbly and very biasedly, I think we did pretty well, but I'll leave you, Lee, to make a call on that rather than me. Importantly, the funding catalysed an opportunity to provide additional value to our transport partner, Metlink, who are very important to us. Secondly, it enabled us to invest time and effort into an innovative solution we ordinarily would simply not have been able to afford to make due to competing priorities. And that's just a simple, fundamental thing as a time and materials business. It also accelerated new exciting opportunities, as Sean alluded to develop similar solutions in different sectors, such as energy, for example, opening up new and different conversations for our people. And last but not least, to come full circle on a theme you've heard me say a couple of times now, it once again provided an invaluable opportunity for good people with high care and real purpose to be part of creating another awesome customer experience while we're helping communities was at the heart of everything that we did. So that's us. Thank you for your attention, and I'm going to hand back to Lee.
Thank you. Another awesome. How are we going for time? Okay, 10 minutes. I'm going to be really quick. Firstly, again, thank you to our 3 great presenters, and we also, it was a little bit of a journey for us to stand this fund up, but when I hear about these innovations and I hear about the potential, it kind of, for me, it was absolutely worth it what we're doing. I want to acknowledge Leonie Murphy, who doesn't mind me doing this, but she's sitting in the room because it was actually Leonie and I that worked on this together from the outset. So also want to acknowledge the work that you've done, Leonie, and all the engagement that you've done with all our different innovators. I forgot to thank at the beginning Oricon for allowing us to use the space. Thank you, and also the support of ITS New Zealand as well. We really do now have some time for questions, so I'm going to hand over to any of you out there, and also I don't know how we're getting the ones online, but if we are, Simon, I'm not sure. We're not.
No, they're lost for words. They're blown away, people.
So if anyone's got any questions, please, this is your opportunity to ask four great innovators and about 3 great innovations and anything in relation to what they've been doing or any challenges or any advice they might have. This is your moment, so, or your opportunity, I should say.
Anna.
Hi. Yeah. So look, awesome, Fiona. I loved your, your plug into MetLink. So that'll be great. Now this is Techweek. So I was at a session yesterday, which somebody there was complaining about electric vehicles, and he said there is no national app to know where the charges are. Like, there's a Tesla app, there's this, there's that, the other thing. He said there's no one place to go when he's travelling to see, what's where and what's available for charging and what's all in the same place. And he was moaning like heck and said that was an opportunity. So I'm just mentioning that now. Maybe that could get funded next year, although Lee, you're nodding. Maybe there's something already in the works.
Well, I was going to say, I actually thought that there's certainly information, I'm pretty sure it's on the Waka Kotahi website around
where. Complete.
Okay, yeah, maybe there's more work to be done, but it's not specific to a brand. That's
I mean, so he needs to be travelling and needs to know right now. Next, pulling up to Ashburton. Is there a charger that's working, or is it in use right now? That sort of real-time information.
So
across all the
clearly
different,
it does exist, but obviously it sounds like I'm not
there's holes in it.
Yeah.
we better, before the second lot of funding closes off.
That's right. That's why people are saying it.
And then you're looking at me, and I was wondering if she's going to hit me up about MetLink cancellations. No, that's. I mean, absolutely, that's something to explore. But it sounds as if Waka Kotahi have already done quite a bit of work on it.
Another question down the back.
Yeah, hi, I'm Leah Murphy from MB. I was just really thrilled to hear about all of the innovations and the kind of congratulations to the fund and the different impacts that that's been able to have. I work in a team that has the airspace integration trials, and Merlin Labs have just recently achieved the certification with the Civil Aviation Authority, which sounds somewhat similar to what you were working with in Final Rail around that technology being able to be certified for safety in this case in the air versus on the rail network. Oh, cool. But maybe there's some synergies or something that we could connect with, or with them. Just sort.
Right.
I think there's an airport just down the road because Oaxaca Air Base. So like the go there.
Oh, Mike.
Yeah, Mike Roach from ITS New Zealand. I really love the MetLink app. I'm looking forward to seeing it when I'm back in Wellington and get my upgrade. But one of the things that, as you create an account with MetLink, it would be quite good to see your cumulative build. I don't know whether that's being looked at as well, but that was just an immediate thought I had.
Yeah, a lot of what we see opportunity around is being able to not just give a per trip comparison for cost and carbon emissions, but actually, if that's your daily commute, what does that mean over a month or a year or a lifetime? So we're exploring that at the moment, in terms of how we could do that. For MetLink, when the user's doing a journey plan, we don't always know whether they're just trying to get from, say, here to the zoo or from home to work. We can kind of sometimes guess, but it's dangerous. And so there are expansions that can be built on top of this to make that more kind of whole of life or monthly costs and carbon emissions as well. Because the numbers can be quite small in terms of the difference between cost and carbon just for one trip. But times that by 10 times a week if you're doing the journey twice a day, it can start adding up.
There's been some interesting research that's come out lately that in terms of changing behaviour, a lot of it was the altruistic of us, we're wanting to reduce emissions, but over time it's actually changed to the opportunity to save money, and that's what's the key game changer in terms of changing people's behaviour. And so absolutely, that's something we're really conscious of and will be part of a phase 2.
Also even consider linking it to health apps and things like that.
Absolutely.
One last question before Simon has his spiel.
Kia ora, Patrick Morgan from Cycling Action Network. AIDAN, just really interested in the equity opportunities for reducing barriers to clean transport. Are you aware of the work Waka Kotahi is doing by Wellington with Techweek, which is providing e-bikes to a travel disadvantaged community? Really interesting work there.
Yep.
In terms of kind of the cultural factors that limit uptake of biking, as well as the financial and safety ones.
Yeah, aware of the project.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting.
Yes, yeah, and I think maybe Leonie's probably best been updated by the team, Big Street Bikers, because they're the ones leading that with Waka Kotahi.
Correct. Yeah, that's right.
So
We can
cool.
pop you onto that.
Yeah.
Great idea, Patrick. Thank you.
That's right. And for our online audience, I guess if you've got questions that you would like to follow up with these people directly, you can do so through me. I'm sure they don't mind me putting you in touch. I might share your email addresses with the recording of the event afterwards, if that's okay with you guys.
Yeah.
Thanks. So just a couple of minutes. Firstly, thanks to Oricon. Thank you to Waka Kotahi and our speakers today. Hope you've all enjoyed what they had to say. Some really exciting examples of what the fund has been able to unlock. Driving innovation is what we're all about at ITS New Zealand, and I think there's lots of exciting ideas. Certainly, the number of applications you get coming in, there's really a great appetite out there in the industry and in the sector to push forward and help achieve some transport outcomes here in New Zealand. So the slide that's up there on the screen, thank you Blair, is TTEC 23. So we have set our dates for TTEC this year, which is our major annual conference for ITS New Zealand. It's, I guess, New Zealand's leading future transport technology focused conference. We have around about 40 speakers every year over 2 days. We'll have international speakers, keynotes, exhibition, fantastic opportunity to learn about the innovations that are emerging, some of the things that have been trialled, what the research is going on here in New Zealand and abroad. So do keep an eye out for that. We're just about to make an announcement calling for abstracts for TTEC, so if you've got some exciting examples of things that you'd like to publicise, do get in touch with us and look out for that. You'll be able to make submissions through our website very shortly. And we do hope to see you there later in the year. Here in Wellington, just opened officially yesterday, so I guess we'll be one of the first conferences there. I think that's all I need to say about TTEC, but yes, thank you Blair. Actually, there you go, some topics and the theme for our conference this year. So it's on advancing safer, smarter, sustainable transport for everyone. Hopefully try to encompass most of the transport outcomes that we're focusing on there. And there's a guideline of the topics that will be structuring the program around there. So technology kind of, as you can see there, weaves into all aspects of transport there. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you to our audience. Hope you enjoyed it, and welcome any feedback. We'll have a recording available for you shortly. Thank you.
Thank you. One last thing.